focus of the today APRE dialogue is the European Green Deal and the role of research and innovation for keeping it sustainable and competitive. On the virtual stage today, we have two special guests. From the European side, a special thanks to John Bell, Director of Direttore Healthy Planet at the DG Research and Innovation of the European Commission. Mr. Bell was also Director of Bioeconomy and also Chief of the Staff Commission at Guggenheim Queen until 2014. From the Italian side, we have Fabio Fava. Fabio Fava is professor at Università of Bologna. He is the chair of the state representative group at the Bio-Based Industry Joint Undertaking, and is also chairing the National Bioeconomy Coordination Body at the Italian presidency of Council of Ministers. The key point of today is the European Green Deal, as presented at the end of this year by the President Ursula von der Leyen. European Green Deal is not only a policy priority. It is the baseline for understanding the European change of paradigm towards the future and towards Horizon Europe. For this reason, I would like to use the President von der Leyen words for introducing the topic in a 1-minute video.
The European Green Deal is Europe's new growth strategy. We have to act now.
The European Commission has prepared 3 concrete actions that will offer a strong basis for the New Deal.
I want Europe to become the first climate-neutral continent in the world by 2050.
Real benefits include zero pollution, affordable and secure energy, smarter transport, and high-quality food.
A Just Transition Fund will leverage public and private money, including with the help of the European Investment Bank.
All these will contribute to a global Green Deal. No one will be left behind.
We will deliver a sustainable Europe investment plan.
Our €1 trillion of investment would give investors confidence to make long-term decisions on environmentally responsible projects. This will mean new jobs, a cleaner environment, and a better quality of life for people.
We Europeans are ready.
Well, as said in the video, the European Green Deal represents the new growth strategy. For the first time, Europe is talking about a green transition, where environment, economy and society are part of the same game. It is not only a matter of framework program, but it is going to strongly influence the next framework program, the next Horizon Europe. So, Mr. Bell, as your first statement, could you please address the main global challenges of the European Green Deal and the coming European action in research and innovation, as well as any relevant policies and regulations?
Grazie mille, Serena, and buongiorno, Italia. Good morning, caro Fabio, and all our colleagues in Italy, and I hope you're all keeping safe and well. Where better to start a conversation about what our new European civilization should look like than in Italy. So this morning, what I'd like to set out in my brief intervention is how research and innovation has to move from being an observer of a process of knowledge-based progress to an area that is going to set direction and help us to navigate in this great transition that we have to take place. The big challenge of this century, as we see, is to reconcile the biosphere and the economy, to bring planet, people and prosperity together. And we have limited time, but unlimited ideas. And it is a new responsibility for research and innovation to give the long-term solutions and options to society, to the economy, and ultimately to the planet. So as you've seen from President von der Leyen, the European Green Deal, for the first time, is looking beyond the current policy investment cycle to a time horizon of 2050. So for 30 years, everything that we do in the European Union will be directed towards achieving climate neutrality within planetary boundaries in a fair and just way. And you can think about this, I like to talk about this as our European Union's fifth great mission. We go back to the Treaty of Rome and we think about The first mission was transforming coal and steel and building peace. Then we built a single market together, and then the Eurozone. We peacefully reunited the continent after the Cold War, and now this forward-looking European Green Deal is the raison d'etre of the European Union. It's our fifth great mission. It is very different in kind in that it requires all of us to engage in a democratic, with our democratic system at all levels, European, national, regional and local, in a new way, because we can't go on in the way we've been going recently, as many people have been saying. We need to build a socially fair transition, and we need to involve citizens in imagining and building the new destinations to create this fairer, greener, cleaner society. So the Green Deal is our navigation, our guiding star for the next 30 years, and it should allow us, in the wake of this dreadful period that we're going through in COVID-19, not simply to have some abstract idea about transitions and research and innovation, but to put research and innovation, our brightest and best ideas and people at the center of building better for the future. So, as you know, the opportunity to change seems to be permanently in front of us. And this terrible experience that we're going through, you've gone through in Italy in a very severe way, COVID-19, has upended most of the ways we think about the planet. The Green Deal was presented as the European Union's new growth strategy before COVID. And now all the more is the case. We have this direction when we move out of this terrible period to see where we want to get to and to set out what the motor and the compass of recovery can be, which is the function of the Green Deal. The European Union will spend 1.8 trillion euro to help reboot the economy. And as our leaders agreed in June, that 30% of this figure should be allocated to making this climate objectives happen on the ground. The cost, as we know, of dealing with the climate crisis, with biodiversity loss, with pollution, with the impact of climate adaptation. You don't need to be standing in San Marco Piazza in Venice to understand the costs of inaction mean that we have to really take this opportunity and exploit it. So this old discussion about competitiveness and sustainability, they're no longer going hand in hand. They're going to become the same thing. And the transition now is where research and innovation can set out how to get there. So investing in this 2030 climate target plan is a central part of the European Green Deal. So we have just last month tabled the proposal, a piece of legislation to raise our greenhouse gas emissions target to at least a reduction to at least 55% by 2030 compared to 1990. It's arbitrary, it's evidence informed, it represents a huge modernization opportunity for our economy and our society, our way of life. But it will not be able to be done without science, knowledge and evidence being quicker in providing insight and analysis and solutions and business models and social innovation to make that happen. So research and innovation has to move, it has to set direction, it has to start providing solutions, it has to build across policies and different areas of research and connecting with actors and markets and financing. It is seen as an enabler of the Green Deal in all of the policy that have been there, in that the major work streams that we've been working on with Fabio and others for many years now on Horizon, we looking at climate, energy, industry, circular economy, farm to fork, the buildings, the new renovation wave, new forms of mobility, how we work on biodiversity and ecosystems and land use and the bioeconomy and pollution and health. All of these areas are central forward-looking mission-oriented aspects that can really power the Green Deal transformation. So what research and innovation needs to do here is to step up in developing, de-risking, demonstrating, deploying and democratizing the kind of innovations at scale that will be needed to help to drive long-term systemic shifts beyond the usual cycles of policy, electoral, institutional and investment cycles. And give you a concrete example, one of the areas in the Green Deal, which is 8 big policy areas, is the renovation wave, which was launched last week, the new Bauhaus. So 40% of our energy consumption in Europe is in our housing and our buildings. And the goal is that we would double the renovation rate by 2030. That's 35 million buildings by 2030, deep renovation. This isn't just about windows and doors, it's about heating and cooling systems. It's about our hospitals and our schools and our social housing. And it's an opportunity really to build back better and fairer and also to deal with energy poverty that many people across Europe suffer from. That was launched last week. It's a very concrete example. We will need a huge amount of new ideas and renovation systems and deployment to do that. A specific new initiative is the Green Deal missions. There are, in Horizon Europe, 5 missions, 4 of which are focused on the Green Deal. Supported, Horizon Europe is the new framework program that is emerging as we speak, and that will support the European Innovation Council for breakthrough ideas on the ground, and support the development of our cooperation in what's called the European Research Area, where we work together. And we are launching 4 Green Deal missions under Horizon Europe in the coming weeks. The documents have just been released about 2 weeks ago in the Research and Innovation Days. I strongly recommend that you read them. And these are moonshot missions where research and innovation, as it did for sending men and women to the moon, will try and harness the power of research and innovation to really drive some critical breakthroughs with society and with the economy in key areas of the Green Deal. There are 4 of these moonshot or earth shots, as Johan Rockström calls them. One is about cleaning up the hydrosphere, healthy ocean seas and coastal and inland waters by 2030. There's the building of 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030. The restoration of 75% of the soil, which is the skin of the planet, in the same time frame, and preparing every part of Europe to be ready, 200 regions to be practicing and demonstrating, and 100 major demonstrators to deal with the big changes that are coming that we can't escape on climate adaptation and societal transformation, whether you're talking about extreme weather or the problems with too much water, too little water, sea level rise, and so forth. So these missions will be announced in a very public way at the end of the year, and we're working together with our colleagues across the European Union to mobilize everybody around what these could do locally. It's really about the different challenges that we have and how we can use them to improve situations in the places where people live and work. So these missions are about producing European public goods on a grand scale, addressing problems that we can't address separately. You know, how do we deal with the big river system or a weather system or the problems that forests and cities will have and so forth. And they must involve citizens in the decision making. I think this is one of the areas where the social scientists are always looking for an opportunity to shine, and how we are going to make democratically involved deliberative decision making in cities and towns and regions about big long-term changes is one of the big questions that we need our social scientists and social innovators to help us with. So the Green Deal is really framing our thinking, our acting, our missions, and indeed we launched the European Green Deal call, the last call of Horizon 2020 a few weeks ago. And this is a €1 billion concrete opportunity in a number of specific areas, the 8 policy areas of the Green Deal, whether it's talking about hydrogen or restoration of ecosystems or renovation of buildings or the bioeconomy, the farm to fork, or circular economies or the water system, or indeed the cross-cutting areas dealing with decision making and knowledge and so forth. This is an attempt to kickstart what research and innovation can do to move the transitions forward. And I strongly encourage you to engage in that call, which is underway and which closes on the 26th of January next year. And this is a very concrete example that was spurred by young people. I'm sure where you're living, it's the same thing. Young people asking us as a science and research community, not simply to have given the background to what we know about the world, but give us some of the solutions, the foreground as to how we're going to move into this greener, more competitive society for work and prosperity and jobs. And last but not least, on Horizon Europe itself, which we're coming to the end of the budgetary process, it'll be more or less €90 billion. About 35% of that at least has to be dealing with these climate realities. So we're looking at this sea change, and we're calling on you to work and think in different ways. And we use this terrible moment of COVID and this challenge that is bringing to our realization that in Europe, we have so much that we can value, that we can build on, that we can improve on. We've learned, and no country has learned this more than anywhere else in history, that really if we can bring together the ideas, the innovators, society, policymakers, that research, innovation, science in particular, makes progress possible. And that's what we have to do next. So I thank you. Again, it's a call to arms for research and innovation to to step up, to engage, and where better to start than in the cradle of civilization, Italy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bell, for this comprehensive and empathic overview about the European Green Deal and the relation with research and innovation. Now, before coming back to a couple of points that you highlighted in your statement, I would like to pass the turn to Fabio and shift the focus at the national level. So today, Italy is one of the few countries in Europe with a strategy and implementation action plan about bioeconomy, one of the fundamental pillars of the European Green Deal. How do you think this would help Italy to implement the Green Deal priority? So how to help Italy and our country in the Green Deal overview? Thank you, Fabio.
Thank you very much, Serena, for the introduction, the invitation, and good morning to all of you, and good morning, John, and thank you for being with us, as usual, very supportive. Thank you, and yes, we are one of the 10 member states with the national bioeconomy strategy, and one of the few which also have implementation action plan in this sector. And I'm sure that this work, this exercise that we did during the last years would remarkably help us in implementing Green Deal priorities, but also for recovering our country from the current COVID difficulties. This because bioeconomy is a very relevant piece of national economy. It is about 12% of turnover and employment, but also in particular for the impacts, very positive impacts on the environment and on the society that we normally associate with the bioeconomy. By using the taxonomy that we are using at EU level, with bioeconomy we are referring to the agri-food sector, the forestry, the pulp and paper, wood industry, but also biorefineries that are refining non-food biomass and fish and residues for producing a number of products. And in this area we also count the segment of the products that we are introducing, bio-based product that we are introducing to the pharma, cosmetic, chemical, and textile, and also energy sectors. And then we have the blue bioeconomy, very relevant for a country like us with 8,000 kilometers of coasts. And then the exploitation of wastewater, bio-waste that we are producing extensively in our cities. All this together is making 330 billion euros of turnover per year and 2 million of jobs. This is a dynamic sector. A recent study demonstrated that this turnover increased by 2% from 2017 to 2018. We are third in Europe after Germany and France, but we are very, very often second as a presence in the more competitive or most competitive project funded by European Commission to Horizon 2020, Societal Challenge 2, and also through the BBI-JU. But we are first in biodiversity richness. We are first as a number of high-quality products, especially food products that we have on the market. So a very dynamic, a very relevant piece of our economy, as I mentioned it. But also the implications on the environment are really prominent. Bioeconomy will help us to protect our environment by assimilating CO2 through the seas to the forest activities, but also to produce bio-based products and fuels that are mitigating CO2 release. Bioeconomy allowing us to produce biodegradable products that are reducing the impact on the environment, but also bringing back carbon to the soil. We clean wastewater and bio-waste by producing clean products and, in particular, carbon that we can reuse, we can bring back to the soil. Bioeconomy is regenerating our environment, is restoring biodiversity, remediating contaminated sites, regenerate marginal lands, but also former industrial sites. So regenerating the environment, and this is intrinsically, as we know very well, circular. We have to work to make it even more circular. But then the impact on the society is also very relevant. It is making food for all. It is creating jobs in the rural, coastal, and abandoned lands. So opportunity, especially for the new generation, and also the ecosystem services, quite relevant for us, for our life, and the resilience. Let me say that resilience is another additional key point of bioeconomy. Resilience is something that we really need, that is close to the society. So all these features is making bioeconomy very relevant in the implementation of the Green Deal priorities. But this was clear already years ago, and this is the reason why we decided, the presidents of Council of Ministers of some governments ago, it was the government of Renzi government, and John knows because we met in 2016 in the Presidents of Council of Ministers. That government decided to launch a national bioeconomy task force, which prepared the first strategy that we present in 2017, and then last year we revised it. And this year we work on the implementation action plan. And in the implementation action plans, there are clear indications on how we can improve or implement the priorities of Green Deal. So how we can implement the farm to fork needs and priorities, how to implement the biodiversity strategy, the implementation action plan for the bio part, for the biological resources. So there we have a lot of indications that will help us in implementing the Green Deal at the national level. The document implementation action plan is now open for consultation. All the major industrial associations have been invited to contribute to it. And this would allow us to better address the point, to better address the need of using bioeconomy for implementing the Green Deal, and in particular the recovery of country. Thank you very much.
Scenario and the Italian strategy. Now I would like to come back for a very few answer, very short answer to Mr. Bell about the COVID-19 and the pandemic that have strongly influenced our daily life. We are aware that the role of research and innovation is the cornerstone for the future. So my question now is are there useful lessons for the future of the European research and innovation to be learned for this pandemic emergency? So if you can learn something from what happened in the last months.
Well, I think we've all learned a lot of humility in the last few months, which is a very good starting place for, I think, all of us. When I was a much younger official, I was working in public health at the time of the food safety crisis, when we set up the agency EFSA in Italy, and we were working on public health, and we had come to a point where we had identified the need for a Member States Health Security Committee for pandemic preparedness task force. We set up the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, and one of the problems we had is that nobody could agree on who actually at what level should manage things on health issues, because it's so sensitive politically. And one of the things we've learned is if then we had a thing like a mission, by now we would have had a chance to do a lot of things to make policymakers have choices that are very difficult to make when you're under pressure. And so I think one of the things about the pandemic is to see, we know what our problems are, more or less, what are the major challenges facing us, and the best chance we have to prepare in the European Union is to work together. And the best chance of giving the best options to people who have to make difficult decisions at all levels, whether they're policymakers or doctors or nurses or families or whatever, is that research and innovation is actively involved at the very beginning in setting out what are the best ways of solving things. So if you look at what we know is going to happen, we know that we have to decarbonize the economy. And as Fabio says, the bioeconomy, for example, will be one of the 7 big areas where decarbonisation will be driven. We were having a discussion about this yesterday with our colleagues in the climate department. It's a very complicated area. It's not just about finding a new battery, or which is difficult enough, or working with new materials for buildings, which is complex enough. It's about looking at living systems where, you know, people and regions and families and farms and so forth work along very complex systems. So what we have to do is we have to break down some of the big problems that we have into different areas of work, and to convene different parts of research innovation to work on generating the data and the knowledge base that's necessary, bringing in as many different actors along the way. So if you're looking at the bioeconomy, you need people who understand about soil, about waste, about water, about nutrients, about biodiversity, about the technologies that can be used to green some of the big industries that are there, about the ways in which we can reskill. So I think one of the lessons is, number one, to be prepared, number two, to convene people through research innovation, and I think number three is to set, I think, quite ambitious but very clear goals. And I think that's what we see is now happening both for the European Green Deal as a whole, in terms of research innovation, where we're trying to go, and in terms of the resources, the extraordinary financial resources which have you know, in peacetime have never been mobilized. The last thing I would say is it's a little bit like if you were standing in the 1850s or the 1840s in the 19th century, and somebody explained to you what needed to happen in the Industrial Revolution. We have this extraordinary insight into what it is that we need to do and how we need to work, and we're very fortunate that we have, you know, 300 years of tradition working in research, science and innovation, in working together, and in Europe, half a century of building on cooperation and diversity. I think in the difficulties that we have, we maybe also see, because of our lock-ins and so forth, when you lose things, you realize how precious are some of the resources that we have. So that's the last point I would make. I think we have reasons to be very optimistic when we come out of this terrible situation. Many of the solutions of which will be driven, of course, by the work that research people like Walter Ricciardi, for example, who's leading the cancer mission for us. A lot of the work that's being done by researchers and scientists and innovators will come to the fore in solving today's problems. So I would stop there.
Mr. Bell. Fabio, you already discussed the point between bioeconomy and pandemic during the last Serena days. Now my question is more focused on Italy and how it can contribute to the recovery of the Italian country.
Thank you. So the bioeconomy has been surely adversely affected by the momentum, and it's difficult to give numbers, specific numbers, also because there are many sectors composing bioeconomy, and also numbers are changing during the months, but surely the agri-food and also the fishery sector lost 25% of their productivity, but the forest activity, in particular the wood and the paper industry, wood processing industry, biorefineries lost much less. We are around 10-15%. But again, these are general numbers, and but there are numbers that are indicating that bioeconomy lost less than other sectors, surely in Italy. This because they are producing essential products, very well recognized at the international level. This also, of course, is very important for market, but particularly because it's quite resilient sector. It is pretty close to the territory, pretty close to the communities that are reacting, that are adjusting, that therefore react by recovering. This is a very key point. When we work on the implementation action plan, the lockdown came and we stopped it. So each of us could check every day the key relevance placed by bioeconomy in our life. So we decided when we came back came back working to identify 5 major national projects to put on place for a faster recovery of our country. There are 5 flagships, concrete and prompt actions, mobilizing different value chains, but also a large number of regions, actors that are located in different regions of our country, with actors that are also ready to invest for about 50% of the cost of the actions. This in order to propose something concrete. And then on this document, we prepare a short document that we provided the different ministries, Professor Conte, the others in charge for the preparation of the recovery fund actions. Just a short overview on the flagships, because they came from the major public-private partnerships that we have in our country. One is coming from the agri-food sector, from the cluster of agri-food. The 2 largest cooperatives that we have in Italy, one by 18,000 farmers in Alca, producing and transforming meat. The other one is Caviro, 12.5 thousand farmers. They are making wine, but they are also implementing circular economy in the sector very well. They merge together and they propose a large project, so very large on the country, addressed to simply recover and valorize through integrated approaches, so by also producing ingredients, for example, from their byproducts and waste that they are generating. There were other 3 flagships coming from the bio-based sector for the green chemistry cluster. One major of these 3 projects, the major one, is coming from the association of the composting industries that we have in our country. They propose to set up new infrastructures, revamping the existing one for a more efficient recovery and integrated valorization of urban bio-waste and wastewater and sludge. Integrated valorization, not only biogas, but more things, including fertilizers and other things. The other 2 flagships that came from this, from the green chemistry cluster, are related to the reconversion of other industrial sites and refineries that we have in our countries, in connection with the territories, by creating value chains locally, and also other value chains, other systems, interconnected systems with rural coastal areas where we can have multi-inputs and multi-products by refineries. The 5th proposal came from the cluster Blue Growth. Here, the Fishery Association, the Association of Fishery Industries that we have in our country, proposed together with other key actors to work in order to improve the sustainability of the fishery and aquaculture sector. In particular, the value chains that we are implementing in the Adriatic Ionian microregion. Here, the idea is to optimize the efficiency of the value chains, valorize byproducts, etc., but also recover plastics from the sea, plastics and other waste, and valorize the plastics collected from the sea in order to create new value chains. These are 5 actions, 5 large projects, concrete, simple, ready to be implemented, ready to create some jobs and surely remarkable environmental benefits, as we need to do in this moment for a quick and wise recovery, I can say, of our country.
Thank you, Mr. Fava. We understand that the COVID-19 and the society are strongly linked. From the President von der Leyen, from Mr. Bell, we understood that the new growth is not only a matter of economics, but one of the 3 elixirs of the green transition is represented by the society, together with environment and economy. For the first time, the citizens are placed at the heart of the change. But my question is about how to consumer citizen will be engaged, because it is not easy, it is not immediately. So what I would like to ask to Mr. Bell is your opinion about what is the best efficient way to promote the R&I Green Deal activities for Horizon Europe among the general public.
Gracias, Serena. I think the first thing is to listen. And you need to find different ways of listening to where the public is at on a lot of these issues. And listening takes many different forms. Of course, there's the political process where politicians have to understand what their electorates are asking them to solve as problems. For research and innovation, very often ideas have been generated sometimes in a vacuum, in terms of just simply working on the fascination of solving problems, which is one of the ways in which so much progress has been achieved in the centuries. I think what we're looking at here in the Green Deal transformation is you're looking at something which requires society, that's people, all kinds of people, not simply those who are fortunate, in all kinds of different places and settings, to agree and give a mandate and be part of the redesign and the redevelopment, the regeneration of critical parts of our way of life. So what Fabio is talking about in terms of, for example, the big industries that we have in food or pulp or paper, or those that are dealing with forestry materials or agricultural waste or all the rest, they are linked into a whole community of people who live in rural areas, who live in forestry areas, in coastal areas, and so forth. So one of the big issues there will be how, in developing the new ways of using technology, do we create value chains and systems that are fair and more supportive of the people who do all the hard work in generating the plants and the crops and the forestry and the fisheries and the waste streams and so forth. And that means that from the beginning, research and innovation in, for example, the public-private partnership at European Union level called the Bio-Based Industries Partnership, or the Circular Bioeconomy Partnership that may replace it soon, we have to put in there a way of interacting with the people Fabio mentioned, the cooperatives, the different rural communities, the regions. This is a very practical way in which from the beginning you design the ecosystem into the transition. A second way is I mentioned this slightly earlier, one of the big problems we're going to have is how do we make very, very long-term decisions at scale which require massive investment. Sometimes you can see, if you look at the tragedy of the bridge in Genoa, that something needs to be done, and there's a way of doing it, and locally, municipally, everybody agrees. But if you're talking about, think about something like sea level rise, for example, and in a city, not just in Venice, but in other places, we have to find a way of working out not simply what the technological solution is, but do people agree on how they want their city or their region to be developed over a period of 30, 40, 50 years. So we're going to need to involve people in how we do decision making and evidence making, those kind of processes. And there, I think, there's a big role for social and political science to step up. And I think these new platforms, the missions that I talked about, the Green Deal missions, hardwired into those in their design. So they haven't been simply created by Pascal Lamy and Connie Hedigo and Kees Veerman and Hanna Gonkiewicz-Waltz. They've been engaging with people all over Europe in just formulating and framing them, and designed into them, and their implementation will be ways of interacting with people between science and innovation and business and society in real places with real governance systems. But I think it's a fundamental challenge. As we all know, I think regardless whether I come from Ireland, I live in Belgium, we all have the same kind of political challenges. How do you make decisions that are long-term in a world that is so short-term? And I think research and innovation, that's one of its big questions. How do we hardwire it in? But I think we've seen from what Fabio is talking about, there are ways and means to do it. Thank you.
total change of paradigm.
Thank you. Thank you. I fully agree with what John mentioned, of course, and I think we have to work a lot on this, the national level for sure, a lot. And on the basis of my experience, we are missing two major groups of actors in all innovation activities that we are putting in place. Surely citizens and consumers, as we mentioned. In the bioeconomy area, we are also missing very often the farmers, the primary producers, if you wish. And this is something which we have to really work a lot during the coming years. Because if we have also both these actors, these groups of actors with us, we can sure be able to plan wise and more effective actions, and but also to have a better acceptance of the process, of the technologies, of the products that are coming from our innovation. Very often we are developing new techniques, new processes that the citizens are not accepting. This has happened very many times, at least in our country. But also the market. We need to have people who are then selecting the products coming from the innovation. So we really need to bring all these other actors with us. It's not an easy exercise. Missions, John mentioned it. It's a very, very strategic tool in my view. Of course, we need to help you in working at the national level to go in deep, to penetrate in the communities and to get from them inputs that then can be valorized in Brussels. So we have an important task here at the national level. But also the actors that are playing with the projects. We have to share more with the citizens, with the initiatives like the one of today, maybe in Italian language, because the language is still a barrier. And so we need to penetrate, to be inside the society. And then this is a message maybe for John. And in the calls, the topics, we are always asking for multi-actors approach, the presence of also all the actors. And but very probably, we need to be more precise here, asking that, for example, a percentage of the budget should be allocated to citizens associations or farmers associations, something like this. When I was younger, I was a very active scientist, and I participated in many FP7 projects, and I can say successful too. And I remember still, 25% of the budget has to be allocated at SMEs, because at that time the major challenge was to involve SMEs. So when we built up the consortium, we had to have SMEs up to 25% of the budget. So it is just a message, just a call. So if we want to have this actor more efficiently involved, we need to create the conditions for which they have to be on board in the projects, not only in the advisory board or answering to questionnaires when we are asking. They have to be on board since the beginning. Thank you. But we have to work a lot at the national level.
Thank you, Fabio. You raise a point very important, because the society should be involved, but maybe the society should also be educated to be part of this kind of action, and it is not easy. As you know, during the APRE conference, a group of young reporters coming from the Italian National Association of Youngers will follow the conference to try to understand our research and innovation point and to try to explain them in a fresh and comprehensive language. But it means that the young generation should be not only involved in the Green Deal action, as you said till now, but maybe they should also be motivated, incentivized to be part of the change. In your opinion, Mr. Bell, how we can do it? Because it is not easy. It is something that should start not only from the European Commission, but should start very early in the process.
Thank you, and Serena and Fabio, I think your last point is something we should take up in our discussions with other member states on some of these definitions in the call, so we get it right. I think it's an interesting idea on being clear about how we involve actors. Well, again, Serena, part of the solution here is to listen to different actors and hear how they would like to be involved. So there are things that we can do. I'll give you a very concrete example. We have a fantastic international cooperation on the Atlantic Ocean with North America, the European Union, South Africa, Brazil, and so forth. And of course, it's a fantastic cooperation between, you know, generally very senior scientists and administrators and so forth, developing calls and creating collaboration and tremendous progress. And at a certain point, we looked at this issue of young people, and we thought, you know, how in something that's as complex as this do you involve young people? And we simply invited all of the members to give us, as a kickstart, a young research ambassador from each of the countries in this partnership. And we facilitated a camp, a summer camp for them in Ireland, where they met themselves, and then we brought to them people on communication with the media, education, literacy, whole areas, and we out of that they expressed a view as to how they would function. And so we have these all Atlantic Ocean youth ambassadors who are now doing fantastic work with their peer group and their societies and where they come from, and of course they're brilliant communicators. So I think I don't think we can do a one size fits all. You know, the European Union has decided that you will be a youth involved in this research project, but I think it's we need to find ways of doing in practice what we're talking about doing in policy. So the European research area that I mentioned earlier on is going to be doing a lot to try and support and help the development of research careers and improving research careers for young researchers. But if there are ways in the European Green Deal call, you will see, for example, there's a number of areas where they're looking to see how can we actually develop the engagement, the dissemination of knowledge and so forth. There's been all kinds of ideas floating around about whether you could have a kind of a Green Deal core of young people or researchers or actors or volunteers. And I'm sure these ideas will emerge, and we will certainly be listening to what younger researchers say. But in Italy, you have an outstanding core of young people there, and we hope you'll be able to keep them in Italy and then move them around the rest of the European Union and the rest as you always have done. So again, we're in listening mode. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. And thank you also for giving me the floor for another question, another one to you, because you mentioned the international cooperation. International cooperation is the strongly strategy for Europe, but only for Italy. We know that there are strategic areas very important for us, like the Mediterranean area. The European Commission funded in the last year several initiatives that are very key for us, like Prima or BlueMed. And for that, I would like to ask you how the Commission is going to boosting again the international cooperation in the next years. I must please a very straight answer because the time is crucial in this moment. But I would like to have your overview about international cooperation in the Mediterranean area. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, I have to be short as well because I'm supposed to be in a meeting elsewhere too. I think the example of the BlueMed led by the Italian presidency and involving regions, researchers in different areas is a blueprint for how we need to work in the mission on the ocean, for example. And I think we are going to build on the platforms and the connections and the networks that are there in bringing things forward. And Prima is another case which is coming to the end of its cycle. It's a slightly different issue. And there we're seeing more and more countries coming on board. I think the BlueMed is actually a blueprint for how to do things, bring the political, the research, the local and the regional areas together and do it in an international setting. We're just finalizing for Horizon Europe the way in which international cooperation will take place. That's a legal issue. And when it's sorted out, of course, with the United Kingdom that we have to deal with, and we need to know how well we can and how closely we can keep working with our colleagues there. I think you'll see this move to the center of the way in which we do all of this, because it's like the European Union itself, it's about working across borders. Scientists, we build bridges, we don't build walls. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. I know, Professor Fava, that you would like to say other things about international cooperation and Italian role, but I would like to pass from the international to the local for the last impression from your side about the role of the region for the bioeconomy and for the Green Deal, because it's something that it's very important for us to stress in the next years.
Yes, thank you. They are play a very relevant role because, as I mentioned many times, bioeconomy is strictly linked to the territories. And we need to work together. The regions and autonomous provinces are 21 in Italy, 21. They have to cooperate. They have to cooperate with the ministries in charge for the area, for the priorities and so on. We need to align and integrate the actions of the different institutions. This in research and innovation, legislation, market promotion, education, training. They are crucial also for aligning, for bringing together the actors. Only a minister can bring together different universities, industries, and so on. So they have also a role here. It's very important for reducing fragmentation, but in particular for maximizing the impacts of all actions, leveraging the resources, the economic resources, but also human resources, infrastructures, for example. But again, to produce a more robust, resilient, and impacting, and also endorsed actions, pre-endorsed actions that then can be fully valorized. And this is very important. It is very important. I can tell this has been what we did since 2006 to date in the National Bioeconomy Coordination Group, in which 4 ministers are there, the 21 regions and autonomous provinces are there, and the 3 major public, private, national partnerships are there. We are working together. So everything is shared, everything should be more effective and more impacting in the long term. It's very important. And the regions are playing a very relevant role also because they are, I don't know if I have time, but I wish to highlight the point that, for example, thanks to BBI-JU, John knows because we had the meeting 2 weeks ago, BBI-JU built up fantastic things in our country. And now we need to continue supporting what has been created. And the regions are very important in this. They need to know what has been created. They need to align their actions in a way that those things, strategic, because there's been evaluated as a strategic in Europe, those things can continue and implemented locally. So this is very important role that regions should play during the coming years, but soon. And they are ready to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabio. I would like to close this second APRE dialogue with the last very quick impression from your side. Are we ready as a politician, as a researcher, innovator, citizen, to really believe that the Green Deal strategy is our last opportunity to grow as Europe in a sustainable way? I know that is a pronastic question, but it's something that is very important to believe for the future.
Serena, I think after the experience of the last few months, if you listen to the voices of people on the balconies across Europe, everybody's ready for a better way and a new way forward. I think we're readier than we've ever been. And now we need to go ahead and work together and do it and build a better place for all of our citizens. I think that's the greatest tribute we can give to the people who've been through such a difficult time in these last few months. Thank you.
I don't know, also from my side, I fully agree.
Yes, of course.
I fully agree with what John mentioned. I think that as a scientist, I can also say that it's the first time that a lot of priorities on which we work for years has been brought together with a clear view. And this would make the difference. Also because this would allow us to interconnect what has been done in the past and to create a new innovation, the new ones that we need. So I think we will have a better future. And research and innovation can help us a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bell. Thank you, Professor Fava. I think that what we understood this morning is that the European Green Deal is not only a strategy, but is a clear action plan that we should understand and implement at different levels, from international to local, from researcher to the citizen. It is not only in the hands of the Europe. It is in the hands of the national and regional governments. It is in the hands of research and innovation, but it is in the hands of all of us. So thank you again for being here in this session, and I'm very honored to have both of you as speakers in this session. So thank you very much. And grazie a tutti i presenti di questa mattina. I switch to Italian, sorry for that, but I would like just to give a very few points for the today program to the other participants. So, grazie a tutti i presenti di questa mattina, spero che la discussione sia stata di vostro interesse. Vi ricordo soltanto il programma, che il programma pubblico della conferenza riprende alle ore 15. Abbiamo un altro Apre Dialogue in previsione questo pomeriggio, e alle ore 15 parleremo di industria europea, parleremo in particolar modo di valorizzazione di quella che è l'industria, il ruolo dell'industria, con Peter Drowell, che è il direttore del Direttorato Prosperity della Commissione Europea. Ne parleremo con Roberto Fedeli, amministratore delegato e direttore generale del Centro Ricerche Fiat. Seguirà, dopo questo Apre Dialogue moderato dal nostro direttore Falsetti, un Apre Brief informativo relativo al secondo pilastro di Horizon Europe, dove i nostri esperti Apre vi racconteranno quelli che sono le novità previste dal programma Horizon Europe. E poi chiudiamo la giornata con il nostro Apre Mag, il nostro caffè al gusto R&I, dove interverranno sempre in tema Green Deal, con il titolo Green Deal Verdi quanto, diversi rappresentanti italiani. In particolar modo interverrà Alessandro Fusacchia della Camera dei Deputati, Annalisa Corrado di Kyoto Club, Gabriele Pasquini della Presidenza del Consiglio dei Ministri, Chiara Pocaterra, nostro esperto Apre, anche NCP per i temi energia e food, e tutto questo moderato dalla nostra Chiara Bongiovanni. Quindi vi aspettiamo pronti in streaming e in live a partire dalle 15, e vi ringrazio per essere stati con noi fino a questo momento. Buona giornata. Ricordo soltanto una cosa: per i nostri soci, appuntamento alle 11 con l'assemblea. Buona giornata a tutti.